Champaign County Agriculture Today with your host, Dennis Riggs.
Hello and welcome back to Champaign County Agriculture Today. My name is Dennis Riggs, your host for the next few minutes as we talk about issues in agriculture and how they affect you no matter where you live, in the town, in the suburbs, or even in the country. But what we're going to talk about today is something that's near and dear to all of us. That's eating, food, and where it comes from, where it's sourced from, and where you can get that type of food. I know many times as we talk about food products, we think, gosh, wonder where this radish came from, or wonder where this lettuce came from. Well, of course, the local foods movement has helped us out a lot there in that we can now find out where our food actually begins. And we have two excellent guests today that's going to tell us more about that. So today on our program we have Jacqueline Hanna, and you are the manager of the local food co-op store here in town.
That's correct.
And Wes Gerald, you are a farmer. How about that? A real live farmer?
Yeah.
People wonder what they look like, and you are one.
I'm one version of it.
Very good. All right. Well, let's start out with Jacqueline, and let's talk about your background. What brings you to Champaign County and your job that you're performing right now?
Okay. Well, it's been a long road to this. I'm now the general manager of Common Ground Food Co-op here in Urbana. I started out in the suburbs of Chicago, and I came here 11 years ago for a job very temporarily and fell in love. So I consider this home. I could never go back to the suburbs. And part of it is here is the connection to the people, connection to the community. I really love it. And that's a big focus of what we do at Common Ground. So I've actually been in natural foods for about 10 years, working at different shops, different places, and different capacities. And I found out about Common Ground just about 2.5 years ago, and found out they were looking for someone to lead them through actual expansion. We've just moved and doubled the size of our store, and that their mission was to focus on local foods, organic foods, and expanding community, just the sense of community, and that it was actually, as a food co-op, we're owned by community members. Anyone can walk in and purchase a share of the co-op, and then they own it, and those are the only owners. And so it really gets to the heart of food and community and what matters to us as a community about our food. We decide that together, and it helps to guide what the store does, which is really near and dear to my heart. And it's been an amazing journey, getting opportunity to work with people and talk to them about what they care about when it comes to food, to meet the farmers. If you live in the suburbs of Chicago, believe me, you never meet your farmers. That will not happen. Even though I grew up around cornfields and so forth, I certainly never met a farmer. And since I've been here, it's been amazing to be part of a community that includes the people who grow our food and get a chance to work with them and meet them.
So did education bring you along into this area, or did work experience bring you along in this area?
Work experience brought me here.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I came here because of a specific job. I worked with an aromatherapist, and she had a shop here and was going to move it to Evanston, Illinois, and I was here to help her move it. And she was very upset when I didn't leave, but I'd fallen in love, so here I stayed.
Well, I think it's a definite benefit that you are here, and we appreciate that. So we'll be talking more about the food co-op in just a second, Jacqueline. Wes,
Yes.
A farmer, is that right? A real farmer? Now,
Right.
have you always been a farmer? Give me a little bit about your background.
In a way, I've always been a farmer. I grew up on a small farm in western Oregon, west of Portland. We had mostly fruit, but just general cow, chickens, everything else that a farmer had back in the 50s. So I started picking berries when I was 5 years old, and didn't quit for a long time. Worked in the canneries, and my folks are actually still on the farm back in Oregon, working away. So that was always there, but I did go away to college and became a biologist and then a soil scientist. I got a PhD in soil science, and then worked in California, Southern California, both in agricultural systems and in some natural systems, desert systems. Learned a lot about how ecosystems work and how all the pieces fit together. Then a few years ago, I moved to Madison and Wisconsin, and then came here from there to be department head in natural resources, environmental sciences at the university. At the same time, we were able to buy a few acres just outside of Urbana and finally get back to what I think I'd wanted to do since I left the farm, which was try my hand at it again. Much different place in terms of climate, and somewhat different in terms of soils. Certainly beautiful soils, best in the world for a variety of crops. But we were wanting to try fruit crops initially. then we thought we'd try some goats because we love cheese, and I'd grown up with some goats, but we just used them to clear brush down in the canyon, so they weren't used much for milk.
Well, you have a farm operating right now here close to Champaign-Urbana, just up
Right.
on North Lincoln. I think we have a slide that you've got a logo and you've gone official, I guess is what we could say. So our
Sure.
slide number one has a picture of that. And of course, every logo tells a story. What's the story behind this one?
Well, this story here is why we use the goats for brush control. This is goats on a peach tree, kind of a unique peach tree, but that's the design that came out. Goats are browsers, so the first thing they want to eat are shrubs and trees when they get out, and then they'll go to weeds, and then after that they'll go to the lush alfalfa and timothy that's in the pasture. So we don't let them get in there any more often than we need to, but that's their natural inclination.
Very
So-
good. Well, I'm going to try something a little bit different here. Usually I ask the expert about how you feel about something, but I'm going to go to Jacqueline. He seems like he has a passion for what he's doing. Now, have you seen that? Do you work with other people, other farmers, and is that something that you see in people that grow food?
Oh, absolutely. Every farmer I work with is unbelievably passionate about what they do, and I think they have to be. They work hard. We think we work hard. Talk to a farmer. And so, everyone I've met is someone who's made a life commitment to growing food, to caring about how food is grown, and to caring about the soil. Really having a relationship not only with the animals they work with, but with the soil and the land that they're on. And so they are, every single one of them in their own way, very passionate. It's never a short conversation with a farmer.
That can be a good thing
That's
or a
true.
bad
Yeah,
thing.
there are days
on the
that
time
we're
of
always
day.
happy to see them, but there are days you're like, oh, it's going to be a conversation. And it's fascinating because they will share with you what they're going through and what the process is. When you work with local food, you learn a lot about where your food comes from. We work with Diane and Jim Moore. They have the Moore's Family Farm in Watsika. And they will come in, and this year they lost a bunch of chickens to a freeze, and she was explaining to me how she had these chickens and how they had frozen and the way they'd frozen and how they tried to prevent them from freezing, but they were too stupid to come in, and and I got quite a story, and it was just and that's why we didn't have eggs this week. But we got the full story behind it, and she really wanted you to know and to understand the process and what they do and how it works on the farm. And so I get this education every time I talk to a farmer because they love to share what they do.
That's a wonderful thing, and of course shows their passion for the production of the beginning of the food chain.
Absolutely.
Well, now I'm going to turn the table and go the other way,
Okay.
Wes. It
Right.
sounds like Jacqueline here is really excited about what she does for the food co-op.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why do you think that food co-op is such a good idea?
Well, I think we're trying to create the food system in its entirety. So starting with the producer and going through the processors and then the sales people all the way to the consumer. I think the farmers that we're talking with think a lot about the consumer, and Jacqueline is our path, one of our paths to get to the consumer. And so that makes somebody with, especially with her understanding and experience and passion for what she does, really invaluable to the producers, so they can get their story across to all the people they can't otherwise meet. Make sure it's an accurate story, a complete story. That's why we talk so long, just to make sure that we've got everything out there for you. But obviously without the whole food system put together, you're not going to get it to where it belongs, and you're not going to get it to the number of people that need it and want it.
Well, I've often thought about this, as a farmer, it takes a lot of time. You're dealing with weather, you're dealing with soil, you're dealing with seed, you're dealing with growing season, that you're so engrossed in doing that, in doing a good job, that sometimes you let slip, oh, by the way, if by some freak of nature I do grow a crop, I need to market it somehow. Is that
Sure.
where the local food co-op helps out?
No, the marketing's critical, and since the move, for example, they've doubled or almost tripled the demand for our product, which has been fantastic. And I think part of that's the recognition outside that this is important, but also it's the professionalism and the way that they deliver the food. So, no, it's all a partnership, all the way up and down the food chain or system. So we want it to be a very educated partnership. We want to make sure that when we grow something or produce something like our cheese, that it is understood and appreciated all the way through. When you're looking for people to handle it, you don't just give it to the person who happens to give you the best price or the best deal. You want to make sure they value it enough to make sure it doesn't spoil, it doesn't get mishandled in other ways, misrepresented. after it gets on their shelves or in their restaurant.
We've heard from Wes here about some of the challenges of weather and bugs, and I know there's a lot of things when you're a farmer. What are your challenges operating the store to make sure that when the consumer comes in and sees the produce or the products in there, that they have a good selection to choose from? What have you learned about the challenges of operating a store?
Well, some of the challenges of a food co-op, especially that specializes in local foods and organic foods, is that of course we've got to get used to and get our consumers used to that there are seasons. We're not used to that in America. We get a strawberry in the dead of winter and we don't think twice about that. So people will come in and will say, oh, all this produce is local. I'm like, well, no, because we've got bananas and pineapples, and it is the dead of winter. And so it's getting ourselves used to the seasons and how that affects what we can carry and what we can offer, and educating our consumers about that. And coming to a balance, we do offer things out of season. We do bring things in from other areas of the country or even from other countries to meet those demands, but also learning to develop those relationships with the farmers. All the ones we work with are just wonderful to work with, very professional. But you have things like we were expecting 80 dozen eggs, and 80 dozen eggs didn't happen because it was way too hot this July, and they didn't come. And having to balance out that, making sure that we have something else there, from a different distributor that isn't local to meet that demand. So there's constantly, for us, learning to adjust to what it means to carry local food and how to make that as available as possible to give it the prime place, as much attention as it deserves, and still be able to meet the consumer's need, because when we walk in the door we expect eggs, whether the local chickens are able to lay or not. And so making that balance happen is definitely a challenge that we face every season. It's different every season, just like it is for farmers. Whatever changes they go through, or fluctuations or difficulties, we also end up having some effects. And it's also educating our consumers, although to be honest, that one is easy for us and a joy. People usually come to us because they know that we specialize in local food and that we have these connections to our producers and our farmers. But it's really getting that information to them. People want this knowledge. How do we get it out to them? We use a newsletter. We've actually have in-store tastings with farmers. People can come in and taste their product. But you have to work with farmers' schedules, and usually just about this time of year we don't really see them again, except for when they're dropping off food until about November. And we've actually done some potlucks. We bring in farmers to talk to people, to actually talk to people who come to our store, and that's been really effective. So we're always looking for new ways to help people understand local food and to grow the market for it, because it is seasonal. How much can we get through, how fast, while it's in season?
Do you sense any disappointment, say, an understanding for the disappointment? I know, Wes, I'm sure you've had a crop that sometimes has failed at a problem, and that story gets related to you, and you don't have as many eggs that week. Do the consumers understand that compassion for what the farmer has to go through?
Well, I think it's something that we have to really talk to them about and educate them about, but found people very open to. People really want a connection to their food and their farmers again, and are just so excited to feel like they have a personal farmer, that they're interested in the story, which is why I really appreciate the farmers take the time to really share with me all the details of what happens and why it happened, because I pass that story on, and when people understand what happens, they are completely compassionate and they do understand. But there's that adjusting to knowing the story and thinking again, like, oh, there's a reason why I couldn't get my eggs this week, or 2 years ago when there was a heavy frost and we lost all of the fruit trees. Basically, we didn't get much fruit at all. Well, why don't we have peaches from Prairie Fruit Farms this year? And being able to explain that story to people, and so it's an adjustment process for them. One, I find they're very willing to go through, but for them to go, but they really need to know why, and they need that connection. Otherwise, we're used to our convenience.
Well, I'm sure you have a special clientele in your store. We'll come back to that in just a second. But all these products you're talking about, I want to turn back to Wes a second. And our next slide number 2 here, is going to talk about some of the products you have out there at your farm. So we put this slide up, and we'll say, okay, explain to us, are these the only things you have, or just a few of the items?
Well, these are just a few of the items, and in fact, we probably won't have any peaches this year because it got down to -15.
There you go.
And,
there's the story.
The flower buds were gone. The trees are fine, so they should be back next year. But that's one thing I grew up with in the West, especially in Oregon and on our farm, and so I was desperately wanting to make sure we had peaches, and we will next year, I think. The berries are also something I think really important. People are appreciating the health benefits of berries, as well as the fact that they're very tasty and nutritious generally. So we've got blackberries, we have raspberries, we have some other caneberries, and also a few strawberries. Really don't sell the tomatoes commercially. We use those in our dinners on the farm and for ourselves. We do some preserves also on the farm because we have a licensed kitchen there, and that allows us to make some preserves, which we do with any excess products or any that don't look quite right, because even though people are getting adjusted to the fact that not everything has to look good to taste good, it's a lot easier to sell a perfect peach than one that's a little off. So we take the ones that taste as good or sometimes better, and that won't travel well, for example, because they're too ripe, and then use those in preserves of a variety of kinds. So we have a variety of products, and we're trying to model the whole food system, and then when people come to the farm, introduce them to the whole food system.
Your experience background has started on the West Coast and moved to the northern areas of the country, and now are here in Illinois, and you're raising what many folks in the area would call a non-traditional crop. Has there been challenges? Has it been as easy, you just have to do it, or what did you learn?
It's no problem. No, I'm kidding. It's a big problem.
Don't try this at home.
I'd be very remiss if I didn't mention my wife, Leslie Cooper Band, who is really the driving force. I'm here speaking, but she's the driving force behind the cheese and most of what we do on the farm, frankly. But yeah, there's some real challenges. So I talk about it quite a bit. The humidity in the summer is a big challenge. I've met a lot of new bugs and a lot of new diseases that I never saw growing up in Oregon, along with the old ones we had. So we're also working on, we're certified organic in the berries and the fruit, not in the goats side of the business, but we are certified organic, and that means that you have a limited number of choices, still a lot of choices in how you manage the system, but it takes a lot of learning, and you just don't grow some things. Finding out that Honeycrisp apples are really Japanese beetle bait out on the farm was a bad shock, because everybody wants a Honeycrisp, and we can't grow them under our conditions. So in other places like Michigan, they've found better ways to do it.
Well, the question I have for you then, a lot of corn and soybeans are grown here in East Central Illinois. Is that a good thing? And you're just kind of stepping out of the limb to kind of push the envelope a little bit?
Right.
Is there a reason we grow corn and soybeans in Illinois?
Well, I'm a soil scientist, so the reason is the climate and the soil, and there's no better place in the world to do that. And so I think it's fantastic to have that incredibly important aspect of agriculture surrounding us, and I just wish that people who drove by knew what was going on. That we see I-57 has so many people from Chicago who don't have a clue about what they're looking at in these fields, and what those big silos hold out there. That seeing these grain silos makes a newcomer even feel very proud, I think, about what the state does for agriculture in general. So what I think the local foods end of this lets us do is expand opportunities for farmers and other people who want to be productive on the land, and to be able to get by with a smaller piece of land that they can make a living on, and to have that direct connection to their consumers at the same time that they're doing that. It also puts a face on agriculture that I think could help all of agriculture benefit down the road, because by selling food on the farm or off the farm, but through somebody who knows the farm, you're able to make a positive link to agriculture that we don't always see, and hopefully another avenue of explanation about what's going on at both large and small scales and intermediate scales.
Well, let's drop a little hope to the people. I bet you today there's somebody watching this today that's saying, oh, I've always wanted to grow blank. I don't know if it's raspberries or peaches or whatever. They like to be their own type of farmer. Sure. Is there a minimum number of acres? When you become too big to be a small farmer? What's your experience there, Wes?
Well, and I think the local food's just a disclaimer there. I think we need to have a lot of middle-sized farmers too, and even some big farmers, as long as they maintain quality and they maintain this transparency about their operation. I think that's an important aspects of local foods. We're growing some pretty good fruit and some pretty good vegetables. In fact, I think that the quality of Midwestern products, at least the ones I've had around here, are as good or better than anything you're ever going to get, even from my home state of Oregon, which hurts a little bit to say, but it's a beautiful place and has a lot going for it. But I think there's something about those challenges and opportunities of a humid summer, perhaps, and of some of these soils for some of the products that make it really top-notch, outstanding quality fruit or vegetable or milk or cheese that the restaurants really appreciate. And I think that Chicago is definitely a big market for local foods as well, and they're finding the highest quality products that you can get in the country.
So local,
Midwest.
local doesn't necessarily just mean inside of Champaign-Urbana, Danville, East Central Illinois. Local can be Chicago, St. Louis.
Well, one of the farmers that sells at Co-op has the best definition I've had yet, and that's the definition of local is as close as you can get it.
Okay.
So local orange might be Florida. So and not just the ones that we have in our greenhouse, but so yeah, it's a matter of looking where you can find something near you that will meet what you need, what your needs are for you or your customers.
Okay. Well, I know we've been talking a lot about crops. Our next slide, slide number 3, is going to talk a little bit more about the four-legged variety
Four-legged crop.
Four-legged crop. What do we see in here? We have a picture coming up here of some little animals. Tell us about this.
Right. These are Nubian and La Mancha goats. The upper left group is our milking does, and Leslie's down there with 2 of our first 3 does. Snickerdoodle and Chocolate, and they
are they all named?
Everyone's named.
Okay.
Yeah. When by the time they get on the milk line, they're named. So we were recommended to get 3. This is what I'd recommend for every small farmer: is to don't start with 100 acres and try to fill it up. Start with a backyard or start with a big lot and see how good you are and what people like. Do tastings.
There you
we
go.
did a year of tastings with our cheese with everybody we could find, especially people we didn't know. So to find out, make sure there wasn't a friendship barrier to an honest assessment. But once they get the tastings, then you can start to understand what people really will go for and appreciate. Even if you become a big wholesaler, you can help your wholesale buyer understand the products and how they can market it too. So it goes on down the line.
Well, this gives me a good chance to go back to Jacqueline for just a second. Wes has kind of got this figured out. Maybe he's, would you say, a mid-sized farm?
We're moving into that, surprisingly enough.
Okay.
We're moving into that dollar amount, yes.
Tell me, Jacqueline, as far as the farmers that you deal with, and oh, by the way, male, female, and then tell me about the sizes. What do you see as your demographics for your farmers that bring you product?
It's all over the board. I would say most of the farmers we work with are married couples that are doing it together. From what I'm learning, is farming is something that takes a whole family. It takes at least 2. Several of the farmers we work with is also their children are involved as well, grown children. So we're seeing families mostly, not just one gender or the other, but both men and women just as involved, just as engaged in the actual farming. I'd say size-wise, a little bit everywhere, mostly on the small side. I would say, I think Blue Moon has 20 acres. I think that's pretty average, around 20 acres. So we're really seeing small scale farming, and more of it. And some of the farmers we work with actually would almost be your backyard farmers. Someone who lives on an acre or 2, who grows a couple crops that we can't get from some of our full-time farmers, and they have day jobs, and they grow us asparagus, or they grow us different things that we have a hard time getting enough of, and they fill in those gaps for us. And so they get the chance to really enjoy farming, and they're very passionate about it, but they do it on just an acre or 2.
I know just outside of your facility here in the summertime, Urbana has what's called the farmers market.
Yes.
Very popular, a lot of people there. How would you differentiate between what's going on at the farmers market and what goes on inside your store just a few hundred feet away?
I'd say that we have a lot of the same focuses and passions, actually. We work with a lot of the same distributors. Actually, one of the most enjoyable parts of my job, one of the things I love most, is the very first day we opened at over here at Lincoln Square Mall. was the farmer's market. It was a farmer's market Saturday, and we got up at 6 a.m., which is nothing for a farmer, but we were tired. And got a huge cart. We have this huge cart, and we walked out to the farmer's market, and we went to probably 7-10 different farmers and picked up our food for the day. And we had this huge cart full of food, and as you're going from booth to booth, the smiles are just getting bigger, and you're greeting every farmer, and there's just this amazing, it was just an amazing experience, and we feel that connection every day with the farmer's market for sure. It's where we meet most of our farmers and our producers. If they work with them, if they work with the farmer's market, they usually come and find us, or we go and find them. What we do is just make it available every day, and we make it possible for it to be year-round for the farmers. And I really hope that Common Ground is part of growing the food economy here in Champaign-Urbana, making it possible for small farmers to distribute their foods, Monday through Friday, and in December, and in November, in January, in days that when they don't have have a farmer's market at all, or they have a smaller crowd. We actually found, we were shocked, Saturdays when there's a market, we thought, well, we won't sell any of Wes's cheese today because he's out there, and you can taste it out there, and we sell out of cheese every Saturday. Every time. So there's this great dynamic relationship between the two, and I think our missions are very similar, and our passions are similar.
Well, I've heard about this cheese. I'm going to have to get a chance to sample it. And our next slide that we're going to put up is, I think, a sampling, Wes, of your cheese. So we're going to put up slide number 5 here, and tell us what we're seeing there.
Well, I'm telling you that I wish Leslie was here, but I know what they all are. She can give a better blow-by-blow of them. But we have the fresh cheese, which is usually less than a week old at the market. So it's really fresh, and it's not enclosed in a plastic tube. It's packed that week. So that's a fresh Chev goat cheese. And then we have some of the bloomy rinds, we call them, the Camembert and Brie style goat cheeses. And on the upper right, we have what's called a tome. So the tome is something we found when we were in Italy. Another goat dairy was making this, and it seemed like a nice fit for us. And so that's an aged cheese. It's made with raw milk. That means it has to be aged longer than 60 days in the United States. And it has a nice bright orange rind on it that is a product of being rubbed regularly with tea made from moonglow pear leaves. So we take pear leaves on our farm, we do an extract, boil that, and then use that tea to rub the surface and create a pretty unique environment that creates a unique cheese.
Well, we've seen a lot of products here. We've heard a lot, and we're winding down on time, so we're extremely short. But in real quick synopsis, what's the future here for your farm? What do you see coming down the road?
Well, for our farm, I think we'll take stock. We're at 40 acres now that we're managing with pasture and hay and crops, and I think that we'll kind of stabilize that for now. What we'd like to do is help other people learn more about agriculture and then help new farmers come in. We have big opportunities for farming not to just be involved in pieces of the food system, but us to get more farmers. And the 2007 census said we are getting more farmers for a change, and we need to make it easier to get in there and easier to stay in it.
Very good. Jacqueline, in just a few seconds, give us the address, location of the co-op, how they can get more information.
Absolutely. It's Common Ground Food Co-op. We're at Lincoln Square Mall. We face Vine Street. We have an external entrance over there next to Cardinal Fitness. We're open from 8 to 8 every day, and actually we're going to start now on Market Saturdays being open at 7 at the same time as the market. So you go to the market, you can come on by the co-op.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your information today. We really appreciate it, and we thank you very much for listening today. I hope you've got some information that you can take back to your own kitchen, and you can tune in again next time when you hear more information right here on Champaign County Agriculture Today. I'm Dennis Riggs. Thanks for listening.
Champaign County Agriculture Today is brought to you by Champaign County Farm Bureau.